Magician's Force came out October 10th, 2003. A day before my birthday, actually. And what an interesting set this is. One of the most iconic sets in Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Argued to be the second most prominent set of the initial run, right behind Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon, for a number of reasons. Whether or not it's the anime cards that came out that were a huge deal, with Dark Magician Girl being the most prominent card for collectors of this set, or even a sleeper hit when it comes to the history of Dark Paladin and the art issues it ran into in the US printings, where it had an incorrect artwork in the original run, and therefore, in recent years, in the last 6 to 10 years or so, has skyrocketed in value. Another prominent anime card. But other than that, Magician's Force is odd. It's a weird set. It's designed weird, with lots of new concepts that were thrown into the game haphazardly with this set. An idea that they were starting to dabble with what a set does on its own. A microcosm, a limited format that would be different than others. Most old Yu-Gi-Oh cards are simple, and they don't do a lot. Especially very powerful simple effects or nonsense that doesn't really matter in the large scheme of things in a game. But this set tried to be different. And as I said in my prior installment of Domain Chronicles, this set alone warranted its own video. And whether or not that was wanted or not, I wanted to talk about it. So today, we're going to, again, take a step back into Yu-Gi-Oh's history to 2003 with one of the most prolific and iconic and weird sets in Yu-Gi-Oh history, with Magician's Force. I'm your host, and welcome back to the Domain Chronicles. So, Magician's Force has a weird design space, as I said. It has union monsters, contact fusion, spell counters, overall in general weird card design, but then also some of the most broken cards we've ever seen that still are having a permanent spot on the ban list that may never come off. It's weird, right? It's full of absurd and bad cards, and then a handful of absurdly powerful ones. It's interesting, to say the least. Union monsters are going to be our first topic. They can be equipped as an equipped spell card to monsters, usually very specific ones, and they can unequip themselves to be special summoned as a monster to a monster zone. It's a weird mechanic that didn't really go well in the grander scheme. Let's start talking about some of these cards so you can see what's going wrong with the design space. So for starters, we have the pair Decayed Commander and Zombie Tiger. Decayed Commander is a regular 4-star zombie monster that when it's normal summoned, it can special summon its partner Zombie Tiger from the hand. If it inflicts battle damage to your opponent by a direct attack, you can discard a random card from their hand. Now where the union comes in is that Zombie Tiger can be equipped to Decayed Commander. And if it is equipped to the card, it gives the card bonus effects. So normally, the Union monsters just on their own are a stat stick. It's slightly stronger than the regular Decayed Commander at 1400 attack, and slightly higher defense at 1600, with a lower level, but same typing and same attribute. However, in a difference, it gives an effect to its partner card. So when equipped to Decayed Commander, it gives the equipped monster 500 attack and defense. And then if the equipped monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, it discards a random card from their hand. So either by battling directly, you can rip a card from the opponent's hand, or by destroying a monster, you can rip a card from the opponent's hand. So the goal here is that these cards want to manipulate the opponent's hand to deny card advantage. This seems fine in practice, but it's only 1500 attack. And then if the equipped card is disrupted in any real way, the zombie tiger is destroyed in the spell and trap card zone as an equipped monster. Which actually, even then, I don't believe... I'm pretty sure it goes to the spell and trap card zone when equipped that way. But for our starting monsters, not very impressive. Our next batch is Giant Orc and Second Goblin. Giant Orc is a 4-star Dark Fiend monster with a massive 2200 attack stat. For a normal summon, that's very high, so there has to be a catch, which there is. If this card attacks, it is changed to defense position at the end of the battle phase, and then you cannot change this battle position until the end of your next turn. However, Second Goblin, when equipped to our aforementioned Giant Orc, allows the equipped monster to change its equipped monster's battle position once per turn. So, the Second Goblin's idea here is that it allows you to manually keep your Giant Orc in upright attack position so it isn't piloted over by anything above 100 attack, or even 0 attack for that matter, because it has 0 defense. Another interesting duo of cards that really just allows the beat stick to be a beat stick. It's still not very good. Then we have a bit of a variety here. So Darkblade is our targeted monster by these Union monsters. Darkblade is a 4-star Dark Warrior monster with no abilities, but a very respectable 1800 attack. So a solid beat stick for the time. The options are you could union it with Pitch Dark Dragon, a rather meager monster that when equipped to the monster gives the attacked equipped monster 400 points of attack and defense. And when it attacks with an attack that is higher than the defense of a defense position monster, it allows Darkblade to deal piercing battle damage, which is decent. So we're looking at a 2200 attack monster that can deal piercing battle damage. A side effect of, like, GOAT format cards like Parshath, that, at least with Parshath, it draws you a card. This is just normal damage. So it's fine, but it could be better. Kiryu is the other option, a 5-star Dark Dragon monster that, when equipped, gives the attack or the equipped monster 900 points instead. And you contribute this card to allow the equipped monster to attack your opponent's life points directly this turn. So either you give Darkblade a more respectable, even further, 2700 attack and lose out on piercing battle damage, and then you contribute the Kiryu in order to allow Darkblade to attack directly, which I guess in a sense could lead to a win if their health is, 1800 or less, and this is the means of you getting past some kind of defense. But overall, it's sort of just fine. Of the ones so far, this is probably the best one yet, but it's still not very good. Then we have Vampiric Orcus and Desdendel, a pair of plant monsters. Vampiric Orcus is a 4-star Earth plant monster that on normal summon can special summon its partner Desdendel from the hand. Then Desdendel, when equipped to Vampiric Orcus, gives the equipped monster the ability where if it destroys one of your opponent's monsters, it special summons a Wicked Plant token, which is a level 1 800 attack and defense plant token. Overall, this is rather fine. Desdendel itself is 2000 defense, even if that's all you use it for, which is respectable to stall out if they can't bypass a 2000 wall, but then, even further, it gives you the ability to, if you are blowing up their monsters, get plant tokens. Tokens can be great, especially in the early game like this, in the earlier era of the game, to have materials for stronger tribute monsters. So overall, it's not bad. I could see the vision, it's just not good. Then we have these weirdos, Aitsu and Koitsu. Aitsu is a 5-star normal monster, fairy and fire type, with 100 attack and 100 defense, requiring a tribute to be played. Then Koitsu, its partner, is a massive 10-star monster that on equip to the monster gives Aitsu 3000 points of attack. Then when it attacks with an attack that is higher than the defense of a defense position monster, it inflicts piercing battle damage. The issue here is you need a means of bypassing the substantial cost of getting these cards out. They're weird, and in theory, it makes a giant beater out of Aitsu with 3,000 and piercing battle damage, which is, yeah, I mean, in theory, it's going to get you some respectable damage in against weaker monsters, but the problem is that it's so expensive to cast. My favorite of the Union monsters, truly, is these two, Freezing Beast and Burning Beast, both of which are 4 stars, Water and Aqua, and Fire and Pyro, respectively, and they have the ability to equip to each other, and giving you different effects based on which one is equipped. With Freezing Beast, it gives the ability for Burning Beast to destroy a face-down spell or trap when you inflict battle damage to your opponent. On the other end, Burning Beast, when equipped to Freezing Beast, gives you the ability to destroy a face-up spell or trap card on the field when inflicting battle damage to your opponent. A means of backer removal, whether face down or face up, which is an interesting concept. I would love if these cards were revisited and given a more modern spin, considering the design is quite cool, and I like the duality of them being water and fire monsters, which could use more support together. Then in general, in the set itself, they released cards to support the Union gimmick. Combination Attack, featuring our Freezing and Burning Beast in the artwork, is a quick play spell card that during the battle phase you can use this effect on one monster that is attacked this turn and is equipped with a Union monster. You change the Union monster back to a monster and face up attack or defense position. Also, the monster that was equipped with the Union monster may attack again this turn. This gives you sort of like a means of attacking multiple times. In theory, this could lead to like some win, but it's weird and the cards aren't very good, so you're probably not winning with this card. Frontline Base is a continuous spell card that once per turn you can special summon a level 4 or lower Union monster from your hand. You can look at it like you're summoning the materials, then if your goal was to play like Koitsu and Aitsu, then you're able to extend further with a normal summon and then a special summon with Frontline Base. But in general, you're probably not going to keep the cards around long enough for it to be worthwhile. So in general, it's just, again, sure, you're summoning your guys, but they're not really doing much. And then the last bits of support here is Formation Union, a normal spell card that can activate one of its effects. You can either equip a Union monster on your side of the field to an appropriate monster on your side of the field as an equipped spell card, or you can unequip one of your equipped Union monsters and special summon it to your side of the field and face up attack position. This could be a means of bypassing some kind of targeting. It could be a means of equipping the monster during the opponent's turn to make it like, you know, if it's Darkblade, it might go up to like 2700 and then destroy the attack target if they don't like redirect and stuff like that. This could be a gotcha moment for some, in some cases, or at least the prevention of one of your guys getting destroyed is like the primary idea here. And then Union Rider is a level 2 wind machine monster with 1,000 attack and defense respectively, and you can take control of up to one Union monster that is currently a monster on your opponent's side of the field and equip it to this card. The Union monster that is equipped to this card cannot be changed back to a monster using its own effect. So this is sort of an anti-support card, because it can take the opponent's stuff, which is like, sure, if you're in a mirror of this type, then I guess. Again, I bring back the idea that they were working for something more in a limited environment. Maybe the pre-release for this set, where in that microcosm where you're only playing Magician's Force cards, this could be relevant for getting rid of a annoying Union target that your opponent is using to get the upper hand. The last bit of arguably anti-support for Unions is Disarmament, a normal trap card that destroys all equipped cards on the field, which would target the equipped spell card versions of Union monsters and destroy them, which is again relevant to the idea of a limited format where you are dealing with Union monsters much more commonly, and a card like this is good removal for getting rid of those Union threats. Contact Fusion was introduced in this set, much further or earlier in than people often talk about. It's usually more famously talked about with stuff like Heroes, like Neospatians, or even more so with meta relevancy with stuff like Gladiator Beasts of the time. But it was introduced with this set. Contact fusion, as it's called, which is a fan-made term, but it works in this case, is a alternate fusion method that does not require polymerization to use, a fusion summoning. It is technically not a fusion summon, however, because it is a built-in special summon on the card. Like Synchro, Xyz, and Link summoning is a special summon type. Just like Contact Fusion is not really a fusion summon, it is an alternative path to achieving a fusion monster. And this was done with the X, Y, and Z monsters, which are also technically Union monsters, kind of the tail end of our topic with Union monsters here. X-Head Cannon is the middle point of this archetype, with a light 4-star machine monster that is 1800 attack and has no abilities, but it can be unioned with Y and Z respectively. Y Dragon Head targets X-Head Cannon specifically, and the equipped monster gains 400 attack and defense. Z Metal Tank, however, can target X-Head Cannon or Y Dragon Head, and on equip gives the equipped monster 600 attack and defense. So either you're equipping it to Y or X, and vice versa for Y giving it to X, and you buff the monster. However, once they are combined, you are given access to the fusion monsters of the archetype. XZ Tank Cannon and YZ Tank Dragon are the first examples. In order to contact fusion these cards, you banish the materials that you control from the field, and then you get access to the extra deck monster, or the fusion deck, respectively from this time, starting with XZ Tank Cannon, which is a 6-star machine fusion that requires our X-Head Cannon and Z Metal Tank. Its ability is to discard a card and then target a face-down spell or trap card to destroy it. Inverse, we have YZ Tank Dragon, which uses the Y and Z materials to get out a 2100 attack and 2200 defense machine monster that can discard a card to target a face-down monster instead and destroy the target. So removal is the gimmick here. Then there's XY Dragon Cannon, the next option, by banishing the X and Y materials to discard a card and then target a face-up spell or trap card your opponent controls and destroy that target. Then there's the boss monster of the archetype, the XYZ Dragon Cannon, which requires all 3 materials of X, Y, and Z to be banished, and then you get a 2800 beater that allows you to discard a card to target any card your opponent controls and destroy the target. So far, these were easily the best Union monsters that were part of this gimmick. They're not very great, but they're at least decent and build into a larger, more powerful monster after the Union thing. However, this was the building blocks for, like, actual good Union stuff in the future, like with the ABC monsters, which are, future, like, retrains of the archetype for the XYZ stuff, which is still, it's good stuff that eventually we got led to good Union things, but these building blocks were rough, to say the least. Spell counters are a counter that are placed on cards that can have those specific cards or counters on them. Like MTG, it is a type of counter that goes on cards. So you could have like 1/1 counters in Magic, or keyword counters like flying or death touch, etc. In this case, it is just a simply named spell counter that is put onto a card and on its own doesn't really do anything. It is often gained by casting spell cards and spent for various effects on other cards, and is often based around spellcaster type strategies, which we will see with what the cards were in this initial run of spell counter stuff from Magician's Force. Starting us off, we have cards that gain spell counters on their own, and that can also remove their own counters for meaningful effects. The most notable one, of course, would be Royal Magical Library, which is famous for like FTKs with Exodia and stuff like that back in the day. It is a level 4 light spellcaster with 0 attack and 2000 defense, which is tough to get over, so it's a pretty decent card on its own. Like most of its ally cards, it gains a spell counter each time a spell card is activated and resolved. And then you can remove spell counters from this card to draw a card. It can hold a max of 3 spell counters. Some of them have their own limit on how many they can carry. Others can carry as many as you like. With our next card, Magical Marionette, which is a 5-star dark spellcaster with 2,000 attack and 1,000 defense. It, of course, gains a spell counter each time a spell card is activated. You can place a spell counter on the card when the spell card resolves. And then it gains 200 attack for each spell counter on it, so there's no limit on this one. You could keep going forever without removing the counters and get a massive beater out of it. But then also, you can remove 2 spell counters from it to target a monster on the field and destroy it. So we have draw, we have removal. So far, a respectable base for a gimmick. Following up on that, we have more cards that gain spell counters and remove them for their own abilities. Breaker the Magical Warrior on normal summon places its own spell counter, and it can only hold 1. And then it gains 300 attack for each spell counter on it, going up to 1900. And then you can remove a spell counter from it to target a spell trap on the field and destroy it. This is a very prolific card of its era. The best of the spell counter cards, ironically, because it just did its own thing. It didn't need other cards to gain them. And you would just gain the one, and then you would blow something up. It could, of course, get its... once you used the spell counter, you could then use other cards to give it a spell counter to then repeat the effect, which is solid. So overall, I mean, beyond how good this card was, like, in GOAT format in general, this card is just great for the gimmick that it's in. And then we have a pair, Skilled Dark Magician and Skilled White Magician. Anime support that does fit into this gimmick, where each time a spell card is activated, they get spell counters with a maximum of 3, and then you contribute them when they have 3 spell counters on them to either special summon a Dark Magician or a Buster Blader, respectively, from your hand, deck, or graveyard, based on which one it is. With Skilled Dark Magician, it gets Dark Magician, and with Skilled White Magician, it gets Buster Blader. Anime support that gives you the ability to special summon relevant Yugi type cards, Dark Magician or Buster Blader, that fit into this spell counter gimmick deck, with of course the idea being that you would use it to summon Dark Paladin. Dark Paladin is the face of the set and the boss monster of this archetype of spell counters for this era of the gimmick. So Dark Paladin is a massive 8-star fusion monster with 2,900 attack, and it requires Dark Magician and Buster Blader as its materials. It has to be fusion summoned, and when a spell card is activated quick effect, you can discard a card to negate and destroy the respectfully spell card. This card must be face up on the field to activate and to resolve this effect, and then it gains 500 attack for each dragon monster on the field and in the graveyard. So if you're going up against dragons, it gets better. If you're not going up against dragons, it probably won't get much bigger on its own, because you're probably not running dragons in your spellcaster deck. But you might be, whatever, your choice. But there is a bit of history with this card, as mentioned. On the left is the correct art of this card from the original Magician's Force set in Japan, and on the right is the secondary artwork that was done for a structure deck in Japan, and then eventually for the Duel Masters Guide promo version that we would get also in America. So when America, Upper Deck, got a hold of these cards to print for the English Magician's Force set, they accidentally flipped the artworks. So the right artwork was in Magician's Force First Edition, and then the original art was just not in the correct spot. So then when the Unlimited print came out, they corrected the art problem, which led to people being like, what's going on? And this led to Upper Deck / Konami having to be transparent and bring up that they screwed up the printing, and that people could mail in their wrong card to get the correct card. And basically, like, it's extremely hard to have that copy nowadays, because the corrected version is the only way to get English First Edition correct art Dark Paladin was from the mail-in, which meant that, like, the card's worth a ton of money. I don't know where it's at right now, because I didn't look, but when I saw a Reddit post about it, it talked about that it was like $6,000 or something like that. It's probably gone down since, or maybe it's like that if it's graded. But point being is that there's an extensive history with this card. It's iconic for the anime when Yugi uses it to defeat Kaiba in Battle City. and is sort of a payoff, I guess, for using spell counters to get out Dark Magician and Buster Blader to then play your Dark Paladin boss monster. There is, of course, support for this archetype. There are cards that could just simply place spell counters. They don't really use them on their own, but they just add them to your field to benefit other monsters. Magical Plant Mandragola on flip can place a spell counter on each face-up card that can have a spell counter placed on it, which is a great way of getting a plethora of them in play. Pitch Black Power Stone is a continuous trap card that on activation gets 3 of its own spell counters, and then once per turn, you can take one of its counters and move it to another card, and then when it runs out of counters, you destroy it, and then you could like recur it or play another copy to get more spell counters to then spread to your cards. Apprentice Magician is another excellent monster that on summon, it targets a face-up card on the field, and you can place a spell counter on it, and then the real bonus is that on destruction by battle, it can special summon a level 2 or lower spellcaster monster from your deck and face down defense position, which could be another copy of itself. It could be a copy of Mandragola. It could be a copy of Vindictive Magician, which on flip destroys a monster. It could be Magician of Faith from older sets that could recur a spell card. Excellent for this type of archetype. There's lots of viable targets here, which is why this card is actually quite solid and good for this gimmick. Then there are cards that just simply remove spell counters from field to gain an ability. Miracle Restoring removes 2 spell counters from the side of the field to target a Dark Magician or Buster Blader in graveyard to special summon them. This could be kind of a win more where you've already played your Dark Paladin, you're about to win, but you need a little bit more damage. You remove 2 spell counters and resummon Monster Reborn, effectively one of your Dark Magicians or Buster Blader at trap speed using spell counters as the cost. And then there is a counter trap in the archetype, Anti-Spell, which can remove 2 spell counters on your side of the field to negate a spell card and destroy it. Then there are, of course, other cards that can remove spell counters as a means of cost. There's Megaton Magical Cannon, which needs 10 spell counters on the field to destroy all cards in your opponent's side of the field, so a massive board wipe payoff for having a huge number of spell counters in play. And then there's this weird one, Armor EXE. It's a light 4-star rock monster with 2400 attack. It's massive for just a normal summon. It cannot attack the same turn as normal summoned, flipped, or specialed. And during each of your and your opponent's standby phases, you remove a spell counter on your side of the field. If you do not, destroy this card. Obviously in Domain, this card is garbage. You're going through 4 players, and it will rapidly need spell counters to stay on field. In a 1v1 environment, it's plausible this lives maybe a turn. That way you can get around and then have a 24 beater to go in and blow something up before you get rid of it. But overall, it's a weird card. Again, these are weird cards, but in general, especially in the confines of Domain where you're playing with 4 players is the idea at a table, getting up to the number of spell counters required for a lot of these cards is quite easy, where everybody's going to be playing spell cards. So there's more chances for you to rapidly gain spell counters and then use them for drawing cards, blowing up monsters, things like that. So these cards are somewhat viable. And we'll talk about it in a minute, but this did get more support in the future that even added to the viability of these cards. And then of course there's anti-support for this, which is Exhausting Spell. It is a normal trap card that removes all spell counters on both sides of the field. So in this limited format we've been mentioning, where this was for a pre-release, your opponent is using spell counters for synergy, and you could play Exhausting Spell to prevent their strategy from functioning. So in a limited environment, there's a lot of checks, right? So there's the ability to deal with the Union monsters, there's abilities to deal with the spell counters. So this is a fascinating environment for a draft, or in general for a pre-release event, where you're there for what's the new cards, and there's a cohesive package of cards that interact with each other meaningfully, but also build up to boss monsters like Dark Paladin, XYZ Dragonhead, stuff like that. Meaningful card design that just didn't quite work in practice, which is a shame for how fascinating this pool of cards is. Now, for spell counters themselves, their history doesn't end here like Union monsters. You have other structure decks came out, like the Endymion stuff, that support spell counters. There was the Eradicator Warlock structure deck that also came out closer to this era in around like 2003, 2004, that also supported spell counters and gave more cards to that deck to fuel its synergies with each other. And then like a boss monster for it, so you could like do more powerful stuff. So really, like, spell counters is not really a necessarily bad gimmick, but it's a weird one that relies on long-term sustainability of your cards, and that's not always guaranteed. But it is a fun idea to play with, especially in a area like Domain format where you have more room to play with weird cards, especially if you're at like lower power tables and stuff like that. Then, as we mentioned, there's weird card design. So there's these three normal monsters: oppressed people, people running about, united resistance, they just don't do anything. There are three normal monsters. And then a trap card, huge revolution, which is a normal trap card, that if you have all three of these cards out during your main phase, you can activate this card. And if you do, you send all cards in your opponent's hand to the graveyard and destroy all cards your opponents control to the on the field. So if you have all three of these guys out and they just don't do anything about it, you can activate this huge revolution and have a massive blowout of all your opponent's stuff, which is very good. It's not going to happen, but like I could imagine this maybe did happen at like a limited format where the other player just drew into nothing and you just get out all three of these guys and then blow them out with huge revolution. It's funny to think that this has actually happened in a game. But beyond that, there's what makes the set iconic, right? So the set is iconic for its anime support. You have stuff like Emblem of Dragon Destroyer that allows you to tutor out a Buster Blader from deck or recur it from graveyard to your hand after you've used it for Skilled White Magician or Dark Paladin. So added support for Buster Blader. You have the pivotal card of the set, the most relevant card of the set for collectors, Dark Magician Girl, which was the secret rare, the most important secret rare of the set. One of Yugi's most iconic monsters. It's a 6-star spellcaster that on attack, for every Dark Magician or Magician of Black Chaos in graveyard, it gains 300 attack, which is quite powerful. And like it's just iconic anime stuff, right? You know, at the end of the day, the reason that this set is so famous is for stuff like Dark Magician Girl and Dark Paladin, other cards we're going to mention here. The last thing for this bit of quota when it comes to like the spellcaster stuff is Diffusion Wave Motion, which is the other secret rare of the set. It's a weird one, but like it is iconic for the anime where Yugi does use this to like win games. If your opponent controls a monster, you can pay 1,000 life points and target a level 7 or higher spellcaster you control. This turn, it must attack all monsters your opponent controls once each. Also, other monsters you control cannot attack. The effects of monsters destroyed by these effects or attacks cannot activate and are negated. So it just turns off the opponent's board, and Dark Magician itself just comes in and sweeps the opponent's board, and you win the game. It's a really cool like anime card that I would love to see used in practice. There is Kaiba support in this set technically with Paladin of White Dragon. This is a 4-star ritual monster that is played with White Dragon Ritual. At the start of the damage step, if it attacks a face-down defensive position monster, it destroys the face-down monster, and then you contribute this card to special summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand or deck, but Blue Eyes White Dragons cannot attack for the rest of the turn, but it is a means of getting out your guy, which is pretty cool. And then there's the entire Amazonas archetype, not like the whole thing, but a large chunk of it is added here. The Amazonas cards they began with like Mai uses them in the anime, but then they got much more representation as like a whole character and a more fully established deck in the GX anime. Amazonas Paladin is our first monster here. They are all like Earth, Warrior, Beast stuff. So it's a 4-star warrior monster. It gains 100 attack for each other Amazonas monster you control. So it's a 1700 beater that just gets bigger for each girl you play, which is sick. Amazonas Blowpiper is a 3-star monster that you select one face-up monster your opponent controls during each of your standby phases, and it loses 500 attack until the end of this turn. There is cards in here that support deterring attacks to certain monsters. So, like Blowpiper, you want to protect it. That way you can lower the attack of their monsters and then beat over them with your Amazonases, is the main idea. You have Amazonas Swordswoman, which is a 4-star warrior with 1500 attack. That your opponent takes any battle damage you would have taken from battles involving this card instead. So you could just kind of like force them to take damage by beating into them with this card on their big monsters. Amazonas Fighter is another 4-star warrior monster that you take no battle damage from attacks involving this card. So even if it gets blown up, you're not taking damage, which is a good way to, not lose the game, obviously. And then Amazonas Tiger, this is our like rarest support card for this deck so far. I believe it was like a super in the original set, or it was a rare, I think. It's a 4-star beast with 1100 attack. You can only control one copy of it on the field. And then this card gains 400 attack for each Amazonas monster you control, and your opponent cannot attack any face-up Amazonas monsters except this one. So as you fill up your board with your girls, the tiger just gets huge, and then they can only attack it, which is a great way to protect your aforementioned Blowpiper. And then you get your board bigger, Paladin gets bigger, and then as Tiger protects your lower end monsters, you can keep beating in with monsters like Swordswoman and Blowpiper to reduce their attack to get rid of viable threats on the board. Of course, this archetype had support. Amazonas Spellcaster is a normal spell card that you can target a Amazonas monster you control and one face-up monster your opponent controls. Switch the original attack of those targets until the end of this turn, which is a great way to get around monsters that are bigger than yours. Amazonas Archers is a normal trap card that when an opponent's monster declares an attack, while you control an Amazonas monster, you change all monsters your opponent currently controls to face-up attack position. Flip effects are not activated because of this. They lose 500 attack and they must attack this turn if able. This is a great way to completely disrupt a person's strategy. If they're hoping for their flip monsters to do something meaningful, this card completely disrupts their move and then also forces them to attack. Usually flip monsters are very weak, low to the ground monsters with powerful abilities, and when those don't trigger and they're forced to attack, this could be a blowout for the opponent's board. And then Dramatic Rescue, a normal trap card, activate only when a card is activated that targets an Amazonas monster. Return the targeted monster to its owner's hand and special summon one other monster from your hand. This can be considered anti-support as well, like in that limited environment we've been talking about, where your opponent is playing the Amazonas package that they pulled from their draft. You flip Dramatic Rescue, you bounce one of their Amazonas monsters, and special summon one of your own cards, which could be quite good in this limited environment that we've been brewing with this set. But then, in general, in the weird pivot, right, the thing is, as we've been talking about, the design space is weird, but then there's also good cards. And then there's some downright broken ones, right? So there's some iconic stuff from this era in this set that isn't just anime related, but actual card game relevant related. You have so like Wave Motion Cannon, which during the main phase, you can send it to the graveyard and it inflicts 1,000 damage to your opponent for each of your standby phases that have passed since it was activated. This is a great card for like burn, for like stall, where you're stalling to try to win. And if they don't have a means of removing it, you just build up a huge wave motion cannon and then blow somebody out with it. We have great protection from this era, very goat staple-y, like My Body as a Shield, a quick play spell card that when your opponent activates a spell or trap or monster effect that would destroy a monster or monsters on your field, you can pay 1,500 life points to negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. So you get rid of their thing, you protect your things, which is very excellent, at the cost of 1,500 life points, which can be steep as the game goes on, but worthwhile to protect your board state. Then there's like powerful floodgates. Spell Canceller, it's a 1 tribute, 5-star wind machine monster, 1,800 attack, which is decent body to stay alive for the most part. Spell cards and their effects on the field cannot be activated and negate all spell effects on the field. This could be brutal, especially in this limited environment where you could be encountering a person aiming to spell sling for their spell counter deck, and Spell Canceller just fully disrupts that strategy. There is, of course, massive typal hate in this set. We have Tribe Infecting Virus, which spent a very long time on the ban list. It's a 4-star water aqua monster with 1600 attack. You can discard a card from your hand and declare one type of monster, and destroy all face-up monsters of the declared type on the field. This is obviously not banned anymore because it's just not that broken, but I mean, for a long time, this card was absurdly powerful and would be very wide-sweeping destruction of the opponent. In a similar vein, we have Rivalry of Warlords, the iconic floodgate that is still played to this day. Continuous trap card. Each player can only control one type of monster. Send all other face-up monsters they control to the graveyard. This is currently spending its time on the limited list of both OCG and TCG, respectfully. And probably should be banned. Just going to keep it real. I don't like this card. But I guess it could be considered necessary if you like floodgates, which I don't. And then we have cards that are still spending time on the ban list to this day. These are massive, very powerful cards, relevant to their era, relevant to this day. Magical Scientist FTK, Mass Driver FTK, Kaiser Coliseum, attributed to degenerate strategies throughout history. All of these cards are extremely relevant to their time, from back then all the way to now. Still banned, will probably never be unbanned. And that's what makes this set fascinating, right? You look at it, and it's like you have weird stuff. The union monsters that don't work. The spell counters that, in theory, should work, and were not executed well in their first round of support. You have Contact Fusion attached to some of the union monsters that would be perfected later in better strategies, but still, you know, there's building blocks for fascinating things here. Union got better with ABCs. Spell counters got better with Endymion. Contact Fusion was perfected in Gladiator Beasts. Like, you have strategies that were built years prior to when they would reach their peaks. All of which, you know, are found here. A set that is known for iconic anime cards, a set that is known for so many things, and instead of being famous for what I think it should be, it's more than just a cash grab for Dark Paladin and its error art history. It's more than a cash grab for Dark Magician Girl and iconic anime cards. This is a set that was designed from the top down to be an interesting clash of gimmicks and archetypes ahead of their time, arguably, in card design, that would be perfected later in a limited environment that would be fascinating to mess with, and a deck restriction style that would be very fun to build around. And I think that should be what it's looked at more for, is the attempt that was made. The mindset of card design that was made here that is much more fascinating than just anime card is cool, right? And I think that's the message I wanted to convey today, is that this set is fascinating. It is my favorite set of the original set of DM era cards. And I think it still will be a long time from now. I believe that this is the most fascinating set in the DM era of cards. And whether or not I will find a more fascinating set to talk about in the future, we'll have to see as we continue to traverse through the Domain Chronicles. I thank you guys for watching all the way to the end here. I mean, this has been quite a journey. So, obviously, you can leave a like down below, and you can comment your thoughts about Magician's Force and the cards in it and everything else down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts about anything, really, in the comment section. And you can, of course, subscribe to the channel to support me as we have broken past 400 subs. Again, thank you for your support as we now begin the road more earnestly towards 500 subs on the channel. But more importantly than that, your time watching these videos is the most important means of support that you can give me when absorbing this content. And for that, I appreciate your time. And I thank you again for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this special edition of the Domain Chronicles, looking back on one of Yu-Gi-Oh's most fascinating sets, Magician's Force. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.